So with that in mind, I'd really like to start by extending a question to mainly the founders of the brands that are on the panel about your thoughts on the Indian beauty market in general. I would love to hear about your key findings when you were researching the market before you launched your brands, because I'm curious to see, first of all, what they were, but also if there were any similarities between the three of you. Jigar, how about you start?
Sure. Thank you, Komal. So we spent a lot of time actually. We spent almost 6 months just researching on the space before we even decided to start the brand together.
Okay.
And a couple of key sort of findings that came out through the research at a consumer level, we felt the skincare market was very, very complex. There were way too many products out there. There was way too much content out there. And the consumers we spoke to were very confused about how to start their skincare journey or in general the beauty journey. So that was one of the main pain points that sort of we discovered through our research, and one of the core principles that we've set out to do is to simplify skincare and simplify beauty. The second thing that we discovered through conversations with dermats was that skincare actually doesn't need to be this complex, right? You do 3 things, that is cleansing, hydrating, and protecting. You do those 3 things consistently and in a disciplined fashion, a large part of your skin health is taken care of. For everything else, you still need a dermat. And we were seeing brands, and a lot of them trying to, take the place of a dermat, which we felt, wasn't the right way to approach. So we focused on just the 3 core value proposition, and our core value proposition is around just a simple 3-step routine of cleansing, hydrating, and protecting, and that's how we came up with the CHP, or the Cleanse, Hydrate, Protect framework. So these were like the 2 main sort of findings that we saw. And lastly, I think there was this always a little bit of a choice consumers had to make between international brands with more chemicals or science-based ingredients versus Indian brands which were Ayurvedic or organic,
right,
or more Indian ingredients, right?
Yeah.
And that's where Deepika, and this is a problem Deepika herself faced, and she's spoken about this, where why choose between the 2? Why can't we have best of both in one bottle? And we've been one of the first brands in the world to innovate and have best of India and best of science in one bottle at an active level. So these are sort of the 3 main findings among plenty other findings that we found out in the initial days of our research.
Okay. Is my mic on? Yes. Nicolas, what were some of your findings before you launched in India?
Well, for us, it really started from a place of need. So when we launched in 2016, we actually had a lot of DMs and emails from customers, Indian customers, who said, hey, I really want your products, I really want to try your products, but I can't bring it into India. So can you come to India? And
right,
obviously, so India was always on our wish list. And I think that there isn't much difference per se, because if you look coming into India, I realized that there were a lot of concerns from especially Indian women about adult acne, breakouts, pigmentation, sun damage,
right,
pollution protection, which is something that people in Thailand, for example, people in Singapore, people in the US would face as well, equally
right,
so.
Yeah.
So I think our approach is really to look into what ingredients and what percentages in what delivery system will give the end user the most efficacious results. And that's what we really try to deliver at LIC Skin, results you can look and feel. And I think that echoing what he said was really just making it as idiot-proof as possible, because at the end of the day, taking care of skin is really like working out. You can't go to the gym twice a month and expect to be toned.
Yeah.
And you have to create products that give people joy in a way,
Yeah,
so they keep using and using and using, because that's the only way you can see results.
That's right. How many of you have used 82E? Would you put your hands up? How many of you have used or are familiar with Allies of Skin? And how many of you here have used or are familiar with Dew? Oh, amazing. Okay. Shamika, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because you've also launched the last, I want to say 3 years, right? And clearly there was a lot of research that went into it. I find it really interesting that you were a lawyer before you decided to sort of make your foray into skincare. But
Yeah.
what was the kind of research that you did as someone who's Indian, who lives in India, as a woman? You are your own target audience.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? What did you find? And are there any similarities between what Nicolas and Jigar have said?
Yeah, so Nicolas, like he mentioned, I probably was one of the customers who DM'd allies saying, come to India. So this really translates and, weaves into why Dew was launched, interestingly. I mean, not specifically allies, but 4 or 5 years ago, for consumers like us in India, we didn't have access to a lot of international skincare makeup brands. A very common way, a practice that we all used to do is whenever we travel abroad or you have a friend or a family traveling abroad, get me my stash from Sephora, get me my stash from Cult. This is what tier 1 city consumers in India were doing for a really long time, including me. And that sort of became the seed that if the consumer appetite in India is for these global level international quality brands, then why do we not have one in India homegrown yet? And that sort of became the seed for why I started working on Dew 4 or 5 years ago, and we launched 3 years ago. So it sort of ties into the whole discussion topic today that now that we have the international brands coming into India, is that a threat to us? What is that? And a very short answer to that is as a...
No, I haven't asked that question yet.
Okay.
So please wait. But yeah, so in terms of research, so I feel like it's quite similar to what Nicolas and Jigar are saying as well.
Yes.
So there was a lot of information about what to do for your skin. At the same time, there's a lot of confusion as well, right? And at the same time, you may know what you want, you may know what actives do, but then it's a lot more difficult to actually find those products in the Indian market, right?
So the why to start Dew was this, what I explained. But now the strategy behind our products was, I as a consumer was also an overwhelmed consumer. Something that I didn't like in the market in India at that time was a lot of Me Too products. Like, you'll find 50 vitamin C serums, 50 niacinamide serums. And I'm like, there needs to be innovation in formula for a consumer to, if I'm starting a brand and if I cannot add something new to the market than what already exists, then I'm just adding to the landfill clutter at the end of the day. That bottle, you're adding something that didn't exist before, but now it's going into clutter. So that sort of innovation in the formulas that we do was the absolute why behind our product development philosophy. And with that in mind, we launched with just one SKU when we launched the brand, and that was the multi-active hustle serum. At that time, now 4.5 years ago, when I started R&D on this particular product, we were seeing a lot of single ingredient serums in the market. Ordinary had really democratized skincare for all of us, which was amazing, but that also had invariably created this confusion of playing chemist at home.
Right.
Also a little bit increase in barrier damage, because if you don't really fully know the science of it, there are many ways you can go wrong when you mix, sort of multiple single ingredient products together. And this confusion and this overwhelming consumer pain point that I saw, I was like, why isn't there a serum that can put all these actives in one bottle, give it to you as a one and done solution? And that became the reason why we launched our first product. So now that's where it began, and then every product that we launch, I try to see in the Indian market, what is it that's missing in each category? How can I slightly elevate it? How can I slightly make it better and give something that doesn't already exist? And that's really how our product development philosophy is. We are 3 years old, but we just have 4 SKUs. We launch slow. We spend a lot of time in R&D, because understanding the pulse of the market is also very important.
Absolutely,
in India.
Yeah. I want to ask Jigar as well, what you were saying about launching with fewer, well, you launched with one, which I loved that, but you've got a smaller stable of products in rotation, and it's quite similar with 82E as well. So I'm wondering if there's a similarity there between how you launch your products. Are you also looking at sort of what you feel the market needs? What's the thought process that goes behind sort of launching a new product?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, so for us, look, as entrepreneurs, you always have a read on the market. You feel the consumer pain point is XYZ. You feel the solution is ABC. But that's just a hypothesis at the end of the day. You can do research, but research can only take you to a certain point. Unless and until you start offering a solution and taking a solution to the market, you'll never know for sure whether your read on the pain point is correct, whether your hypothesis of the solution is truly working or no. So for those reasons, we also started with just 2 products. It was very important. In startup or tech parlance, we call this lean startup methodology, right? Where you start small, take something to market, learn from consumers, come back, iterate, and then you expand your product range, right? So that's the strategy, and which is exactly why we had a drop strategy of launch,
right,
where roughly every month we've been launching one product, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's precisely why.
Okay, now let's get to why we're really here, which is the point of the panel, which is with the advent of so many international brands in India, what does that mean for homegrown brands? We're we're at this point where brands like L'Oreal and Unilever are really looking to India specifically to bolster their growth, because it is such a huge market. You have, things like Estee Lauder globally saw a massive uptick in sales just based off the launch of The Ordinary here in India, right? So everyone's looking to India to sort of penetrate the market, increase sort of brand recall, all the rest of it. And I'd really like to ask, well, all of you, and I know you have an answer for this already, but I'd really like to ask Bhakti, on the sort of e-commerce side, what's your perspective on this? What are you seeing in terms of this large influx of brands? And on Tira, you guys have a real mix of, international and homegrown brands as well. So what are you seeing in terms of what does the consumer want? And what are the sales sort of telling you? And also, what's your thought process when you onboard a brand, whether it's international or Indian?
I think that's a great question, Komal, and this is something that I think we debate on a daily basis in, our conference rooms with my merchandising team. And so, when we started Tira, I think we had a very simple mission statement to have the most curated assortment of global and homegrown brands in the country, And I think one thing about having international brands in India that's done to the homegrown brand market is given the perspective that people want quality at every price point, and it's kind of increased the pressure on homegrown brands to deliver on quality and not just have products that they can roll out basis a trend. So the pressure to match quality, to match packaging, to match authenticity, and not, as Shamika said, not just roll out vitamin C and niacinamide products, to really have a story that you can connect with and then, make that your brand to go with. Because, let's be real, in today's market, innovation and differentiation is something that international brands or homegrown brands need to constantly work on. But if you have a story that connects with me, that authenticity, then someone will go to the brand, So if there are 5 different products, I think it's very, very, a brand that does well on storytelling, a brand that, talks about how they've emerged. And that's why founder-led brands are really, making a ripple in today's day and age. When it comes to, I think, your second question on homegrown versus international brands, I think India, as you said, everyone is looking to India because while consumers used to travel constantly and get products, earlier, now the fact that brands like Estee Lauder and L'Oreal have offices based in India, it's become very commonplace to, have these brands. So a Mac has been around for 20 years. And, it's as good as a homegrown brand now. It's taken that cult status, And to compete with a brand like Mac, you have a brand like Lakme again, which is a homegrown brand. And it has such a strong story. But again, it also has a strong backing like a Unilever. So I think it's really the combination of good product, good storytelling, and a connection to what people see when it comes to picking a brand. So I think global and homegrown, yes, there is that back and forth. But I think what's happened in India is the awareness is increased and people want quality. So if quality can be given by a homegrown brand, they go there. If quality can be given by a global brand, they go there. So while credibility is still still on the spectrum of global brands because they're made in Italy, they're made in France, there is that, we're a follower market and people look for credibility in those markets. I think India is catching up. If you look at two of the biggest, acquisitions in the recent investments in the recent times in beauty, it's been Forest Essentials and Kama Ayurveda, which have had, investments by two of the big beauty conglomerates, Puj and for Estee Lauder, and they have now they have majority stake in these companies. So that means that when a brand like Forest and Kama, they have such a strong story rooted in India, and that's what's really working. So I think it's all about quality, credibility, and authenticity that is allowing people to shop versus homegrown and this. And we've seen that right at every section. So Maybelline and Lakme, are always dominating and fighting with each other in the masstige segment. L'Oreal is up there when it comes to skincare because of efficacy and credibility. And Kama Ayurveda and Forest Essentials are two of the leading brands in the luxury section in skincare. So it's not one versus the other. It's basis these three.
So the
pieces.
answer to the question, do the international brands threaten the homegrown brands is
no.
Okay,
no.
That's the answer. We can all leave now. That's it. We've answered the question. No, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, Shamika.
So, as a consumer, I am ecstatic. I am very excited. This is an amazing time to be in India because all these brands that we've loved from afar are finally looking at India as a market that it deserves to be looked at. Consumption appetite of India is going up.
Yeah.
The best thing is it's not a finite market. Like US or the West, for example, there is still a saturation even from a consumption, not just a business perspective, from a consumer perspective. But India, it's booming.
Yeah.
Tier 2 is still not tapped. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 7-8 years. So it's an infinite market. So very exciting time to be here as a consumer. And as a founder, it also, I'm glad for it because for a lot of time, in India, and Komal, you might very strongly agree with this, is a lot of brands would be okay to sort of push substandard products into the market. And what the advent of really good quality brands in India coming in from outside is doing is that anything substandard is just going to get weeded out. It's becoming a climate of survival of the fittest. If you cannot deliver and give to the consumer what they find value and quality, as you mentioned, there is a silent graveyard that's already started. Yeah. That 1.5 years, a little over a year, brands are shutting down, homegrown brands.
Yeah.
So if you are launching in this industry thinking beauty is really hot right now, let me make a quick buck, that's not, that you won't survive. Harshly, that is the reality. So you have to go beyond even giving a good quality product. Like there has to be a strong why to your brand. There has to be so much storytelling for the consumer to connect with you. You can't just make a sale once. It's not just acquisition, it's also retention. There are so many things that are pushing. The advent of international brands is going to push homegrown brands to just put the best foot forward on all aspects, which is a great thing, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. I want to ask Nicolas what you think. I want to ask you, Nicolas, what you think about, as an international brand that's entering the market, you're obviously well aware of, there's no dearth of really interesting Indian brands that already exist in the market. And like we've been saying as well, the market's only growing. What do you think about, how is it in terms of how you view your competition, as it were, in India?
I think personally, I see competition a little bit differently. I like to think that I live in an abundant universe, so there's enough room for all of us to achieve our dreams. So that's the way I approach it. But I also always take a step back and start with the why. Like, why should people care? Why should people spend their hard-earned money on my product? So it always, first and foremost, starts from a place of need. So I will never create or launch everything or anything without first needing it in my routine. And so for me, our R&D process, because I create everything from scratch, is about 3 to 5 years. So it's really, really rigorous. And you know, when it came time, for example, this vitamin C topic, when it came time for us to decide to create a vitamin C serum, I took a step back and I went on social listening. I went on Reddit, I went on Instagram, and I saw what people were talking about, how unhappy they were, or their pain points of vitamin C. So it oxidizes, as in it goes brown very quickly. It irritates their skin, it makes them break out. They can't take high concentrations of vitamin C. And then from a scientific perspective, I realized that it was because most vitamin Cs are formulated with water. And there's nothing wrong with that, that's just how it is. So, but when you take water out of the equation, you have a 3-year shelf life. So our vitamin C has a waterless base, and we actually make it with pure diamond powder. So when you apply it on very damp skin, it actually helps your skin look like a filter. So not only could we have 20% in a diamond base, it actually doesn't go brown at all. So it stays clear and fresh for 3 years, which is really incredible, especially for a retailer where there's a minimum shelf life requirement. And also more importantly, when you take water out of the equation, you actually bypass the need for a pH. So a lot of you, maybe you know, but most of the times when you add vitamin C with water, you have to formulate at a very low pH, pH 2.8 or 3. And whenever we formulate a chemical peel, for example, in order for us to export it, it needs to be a pH of 3.5 and above. Which means that most of the time your vitamin C that's water-based is more acidic than your chemical peel, which is why people sometimes break out or they have a reaction. So by taking water out of the equation, we not only have this incredible potent fresh formula, but we also allow people to experience the benefits of higher concentration strength of vitamin C without any of the drawbacks. And that's, I think, one of the ways in which Allies' skin is different. And the other thing that we also do in 2013 when I started formulating, I found the owner of a patented form of encapsulated retinaldehyde, which is the most bioavailable form that you can find over the counter. And they have the global patent and they created it. And in and of itself, this ingredient is one of the most widely studied, is the gold standard for, I hate to use the word anti-aging, for anyone with aging concerns because it checks all the boxes. And so for us, it was very important to not only use the most superior form, but to use a very smart form so that it's time release, so that when you sleep, you not only don't get the full dosage all at once, but anyone, no matter which stage of your life you're at, you can experience the full benefits. And I think at Tira, and I know this, we're the only retinaldehyde brand. We're the only ones with waterless vitamin C serum. So I think competition is really, really great because it allows all of us to level up our game. But I also truly believe in the beauty of innovation, because if I see somebody cool doing it, I'm like, oh, I want to be cool too. So let me figure out how to step up my game, and that's the way I see it.
Oh, very cool. What's that?
It also makes the pie bigger, you know,
Exactly.
for everyone. It's not a limited pie, so it's actually amazing.
Oh my God, I could talk to you guys all day. Anyway, so Jigar, I want to ask you now. I'm thinking of, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because I'm thinking of brands like Lancôme, Estée, L'Oreal. You know, with the celebrity brand ambassador route. I mean, that's a tried and tested way to go. But I'm curious how you feel about, you know, do you leverage that love for celebrity that we are sort of born with in India? And how has that impacted sort of how you guys market the brand with, you know, Deepika as the face of it? How big a part of that is that 482E? And would you say that it's at the same level as, say, a brand ambassador for Lancôme, for example? I mean, what is it, a founder-led brand? Is it a celebrity-led brand? I mean, how exactly would you define it in those terms?
So I think I'll correct you there. She's not just the face of the brand, she's a co-founder of the brand. And she's deeply involved in the entire product trial process. So we have our own R&D. The vision that she had of marrying, as I said earlier in the conversation, about marrying India and science into one bottle. We needed the R&D capabilities to actually do that.
Right.
And that's the reason we've set up our own R&D lab run by 2 senior PhD scientists. Both Deepika and I, and especially Deepika, get involved in the product trial process. So the products, like for example, Ashwagandha Bounce, the initial sort of submissions from the R&D lab will be like, let's say 3 iterations of the same moisturizer, is actually tried by Deepika on her own skin.
Right.
Before it has even gone into dermat and clinical testing. So that's the level of involvement she has in the brand, and we're building this exactly like any other founder would build it.
Which is
a lot of
amazing, yeah.
involvement even at the ingredient selection stage or the product conceptualization stage is done by her.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the key difference, I think, between having a celebrity as an endorser of the
Right,
brand
right.
and a celebrity as an entrepreneur and a co-founder of a brand.
Right.
Right? As far as the earlier part of the question is concerned in terms of international brands, I think, look, skincare is not a winner-take-all category. And in India, and not just skincare, in general, beauty, right? We are still at an infancy stage.
That's right,
So
yeah.
if you see the penetration, the per capita, I'll just cite one number which will explain this point very clearly. So per capita spend on beauty personal care per annum in India is at $10, $14, depending on the report you read. As compared to that, the US, that number with 1/3 of the population is $300, right? That just goes to show what the room for growth in this industry is, and the penetration and the early stage at which we are, right? So it's not a winner-take-all category. In fact, I think there are multiple models that can coexist. There are multiple price points that can coexist. There are multiple brands that can even be built at different geography kind of a thing, right? That can absolutely coexist. So we don't see that as a threat. In fact, we don't even focus there. We focus on our consumers, the pain point that we see and have been validating over the last 1 year in our consumers, and focus on trying to innovate. And I completely echo what Shamika said, that I think innovation is key, and that's exactly why we set up our own R&D, right? If you are not adding value to your consumers are going to read through the lines, and you're no longer going to be relevant, right? So just having a Me Too solution, which is off the shelf, just go to a third-party manufacturer, pick something from the catalog, is no longer going to work, right? You will have to get involved. You will have to understand your consumers. You'll have to build a solution that is formidable and adding true value to your consumers.
Right. Okay. I have a question for mainly for Bhakti, for Shamika, and for Jigar. Sorry, Nicolas. And then I have a question for you as well. But as individuals who are in the beauty industry in India, I want to sort of pose a rhetorical, sorry, not a rhetorical, I want you to imagine something, right? Imagine there was a mandate passed by the government about 10 years ago that forbade all international beauty and personal care brands from entering the market in a bid to sort of, make in India or whatever it is, right? Imagine that was the scenario that you were coming into. Imagine that's the scenario that we're living in today. How do you think that the beauty industry in India would look? What does that look like to you? A scenario where there are no international brands.
I think, Komal, we've kind of lived through this, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
The Gen Z, the young generation of today is very lucky to have so much access to brands, to international brands at the snap of a finger. And there's also so much awareness. I think when we were growing up, that was not something that was, readily available. But, in a scenario like that, I always think that, whenever there's need, everyone steps up to it. So I think if there was that mandate, and I think what we are not realizing is that India has a history and tradition of beauty,
Right.
So I think that while with the advent of international brands coming in and so much knowledge and awareness, there is a need to always follow the Western world and the global standards. I think that we would have really stepped it up, and as I said, Kama and Forest have done it already, and they've actually, and as Jigar said, found a mix of efficacious ingredients as well as Indian beauty secrets that have been passed on for generations and really, modernize them completely. So I think that, there would be so much more innovation in terms of setting up manufacturing, meeting a lot more standards. And, I don't see it. I just think it would be a major, major opportunity for us to really be able to do that. So I think that it would not look exactly like the way it is now, but if you see a brand like Lakme, again, competing with all the global brands, in terms of innovation, and they're one of the brands that innovate constantly.
Right. Yeah.
So I think they're leading in innovation, and I think that we would have relied a lot more on our on the traditions that have been passed on and tried a little harder to constantly push that through,
Right. Okay.
I think, yeah, there would have been a little bit more reliance on that, a little bit more reliance on doing a little bit more to even, I think, set better beauty standards, because right now we follow European regulations, we follow FDA regulations, but I think that there would be a lot more rigor and strictness in what we were building. I also think that there would be this need to understand the Indian consumer a lot more, because I think right now with international brands, if they're born in Italy or, the US, they understand what the consumer needs in that market. I think that there would be a lot more products made for the Indian skin type, really,
Right.
really.
Oh, that's
I feel
interesting.
like
Yeah,
brown
yeah.
skin, right? I think there's products for Caucasian skin. There's products for all different kinds of skin tones. But I think in
Skin
India,
tones, yeah.
skin tones.
But when it
I
comes to
think-
skincare, mostly skin is skin. No,
I'm
but
only
with
talking about
makeup,
color,
with
right?
makeup,
Color
that's
cosmetics.
a huge factor.
So I
yeah,
think we don't talk about brown skin. We don't talk about melanin-rich skin. We don't talk about the different effects that Indians face. So
Yeah.
I think those conversations would be at the forefront, and I think we're trying to do that now. But I think that there would be so much more focus on that, because all your brands would really be catering to only the Indian consumer. So there
Yeah.
would be that need constantly to push it versus giving people, what they've been seeing globally and what they want. So I think that even brands today in India are kind of trying to match up to those, match up to the global brands.
Yeah.
So I think there would be a shift in the way that we would only be creating for the Indian consumer, and then maybe exporting those out of to other countries. And
like what happened with Japan. I mean, they were
Exactly.
closed off for so long.
Exactly.
They have a vibrant sort of beauty landscape.
And Korea.
That they've then been able to,
Exactly.
yeah. Interesting. That's a really nice positive take on it. I was
Yeah.
not, I mean, yeah, okay. Shamika, what do you think the beauty landscape would look like? I think basically what I want to ask is, do you think it would be a good thing for international brands to never have entered the market? Or do you think it would have been an awful thing, or somewhere in between?
So your question is if international brands never
Just
were
never.
allowed to enter in India,
No.
or that every brand in India had to be made in India, because you use made in India somewhere. So I'm just clarifying.
No, that they were just not allowed to enter.
Allowed. Well, that was, like she said, we lived through that. That's exactly why Dew was born.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be easy to imagine. I would want to bring to you that kind of quality in skincare that you're aspiring but is not allowed to enter in India. Here's me giving you Dew. So in that sense, that's really how it worked out. But I have a slightly negative answer here.
Good, I'm glad.
She's excited. I think, sometimes we as Indians, we need like a jhatka. Like we need that jolt to our systems to just be better.
Yeah.
And also sometimes as Indians, we have this habit, this is just our upbringing, to sort of settle for whatever we are given. Now the newer generation is demanding better, but that's not how it always was.
Okay.
We were told to be happy with whatever, be content with whatever you've given.
Okay.
So, which that sort of translates in market economics in the way that whatever you were getting, you'd be happy with the kind of brands you were getting. Nobody would have demanded better.
Right.
So maybe it may not have been that great a thing if
Yeah.
it were allowed in India.
Yeah.
Because a consumer has to then feel the kind of quality and the high performance they get in, say, an international brand, and then start asking Indian brands to give me better for my money.
Yeah.
And that sort of jolts the system, for the brands, and then they pull up their socks and just offer better. And so if that would have never happened, if international brands were never allowed, maybe we would have continued, sort of being okay with whatever brands were there.
Yeah.
I was someone who was living overseas for many years, so I had a vantage point of view where I was a consumer of international brands, and when moving back to India I couldn't find that became the shock to my system to offer it to the market. So I would think that it could also go negative or it could also go positive, the way Bhakti is
I mean, okay, well, it's not about what I think. Let's ask what Jigar thinks, and then I'll share what I think. But those are really interesting perspectives. I'd love to hear what you think.
Sure. I think it does matter what you also say. So.
Oh, thank you. But
no, I'll echo what Shamika said, right? I think I'll also take a little negative view here on this particular question where, take for example, color, right? We're seeing globally a clear trend of skinification in color, but the R&D capabilities in India are just not there, right? Can we build a great skincare product in this country? Answer is yes. I would like to stick my neck out and say we've done that at 82 East. In terms of the innovation we've done in skincare. Can a brand build a great color product which is competing with the best in the world, which is 100% developed in India? I don't think we're there yet, right? And this is a scenario with all the international brands present in India. So now, to your question, imagine a scenario when international brands are not there. I feel like we might be lagging a bit in terms of the R&D and the innovation factor, right? So,
I also disagree, because if you see today a brand like the Minimalist has managed to go and they're present in Sephora UK.
Right.
That's a big one. And
but Bhakti, there's skin, right? I'm talking
skin,
more color. Skin, we've cracked it. We've cracked skin for sure. In general, personal care or emulsion-based products, we've cracked it, I think. But take color, for example, right? We're lagging. We're still reliant on the global giants. We don't have enough R&D capabilities here.
Then I'd be scared. Made in India, because there are definitely manufacturing and R&D hurdles in India, and that packaging, huge hurdle. You can't get superior packaging in India. So there are certain things, the certain kind of technology, formulation technology for the elegance in chemistry. There we still have to go to labs overseas. So that would be a worrisome.
I mean, shade matching cannot happen in India, right? It's that
There've
the level.
There've been many,
right?
many
So,
attempts, but it's not where, like, say, Fenty or MAC is. I get what you're saying. I'm of the opinion that, nothing thrives without oxygen, and I feel like competition is the oxygen that you need. I'm a fan of capitalism, and I think that I think it's great to have the competition that really pushes you to sort of want to achieve better and also look around and see what's going on. But I think it's really interesting what you said as well, because I feel like maybe certain pain points that we have as an Indian consumer, especially with color, possibly wouldn't exist.
Absolutely.
And I think that would then maybe open up markets, where there are other melanated, as it's not really a term, by the way, but it's so popular now that we'll just use it, where other melanated majority audiences live. So, that could have been maybe something that we excelled at then. Color cosmetics across India, parts of Asia, Africa, maybe we could have been, leaders in that. So that's interesting, and that's not a perspective I'd ever really considered. And I think, as is always the problem, especially when I'm talking, is time. So I just want to end with one question to all of you. And Nicolas, I wanted to ask you, as the one international brand on this panel that's come into India, how do you think, what's marketing been like for you in India? I know you guys are still quite new in the market, but in terms of what you have planned, how is it different from how you market in other markets, market in other countries, or is it different?
So because we are a clinical skincare brand that really focuses on efficacy, so our strategy is pretty much the same. And I like to call this sort of like the pyramid I'm trying to build. So the base of the pyramid is always about credibility. So it's working with the dermatologist to explain, why waterless vitamin C's, what are encapsulated retinaldehyde, what do peptides do, things like that. Then the second tier of the pyramid is where you will have your celebrity makeup artists, you'll have your celebrity facialists, you will have your skintellectual influencers, your skin influencers, and then the top of the pyramid, it will be your celebrities. So, for example, we've got a lot of Hollywood. We just did Harrison Ford at the Golden Globes. Bihati Prince Sue, Henry Golding, all of these. I just did Pedro Pascal's routine.
Like personally?
Yeah. So it's like all of that has to trickle down. But if you take a step back,
we'll chat later. But
if you take a step back and you think about, okay, so maybe a brand invests in a big Hollywood face, but then you don't have the credibility, and so you get a lot of eyeballs, but then they bounce, and then you don't convert.
Yeah.
So what we're really trying to do, especially in India, and especially one of the reasons why we picked Tira, it's the fact that it takes years to build a brand, and like Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of education, especially the fact that our formulations are very effortless and easy to use, but they are very sophisticated.
Yeah.
So it takes time to explain and for people to digest. So really in and of itself, we see, I guess, marketing as a 3-tier approach, because there's no point spending so much money on, influencers if you don't build this strong foundation of credibility and education.
Sometimes influencers can be sort of go against you, right?
Yes.
If there is no strong foundation to begin with.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that people are so savvy these days.
Yes.
And we have a lot of customers who are DMing us wanting to know the molecular weight of the hyaluronic acid. They're writing in to know what percentages it is.
Yeah.
They want to know if this vitamin C is water soluble or fat soluble.
Yes.
And it's
love
really
that.
great.
Yeah.
And I see hopefully the Indian consumers also just being more educated, because I think that it just allows all of us to step out our game and create cooler stuff that deliver results.
Yeah, okay. Jigar, how do you feel about marketing in this very unique country that is India?
I think it's very important to be authentic. I'll just take one word he used, a chemical rather, hyaluronic acid, right, for example. Now, hyaluronic acid as an ingredient can be 1,000 rupees a kg, or it can be as high as 1,30,000 rupees a kg, right?
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. We use sodium hyaluronate, which is a close cousin of hyaluronic acid, right, in ashwagandha bounce, which is a hero product. And we use the highest end spectrum raw materials in our product, right? So when we talk about quality, sometimes I feel like it has a tendency of everybody talks quality, right? Even a 200 rupee brand will talk quality, that I'm different on quality. But this is really the difference, right? When you say 10% concentration hyaluronic acid, but if it's 1,000 rupee kg a batch, versus even if you say 1%, but it's a 1,30,000 rupee kg a batch, that's going to do a hell lot of a difference versus the 10% one, right? So I think that's the change that needs to happen. It'll gradually happen. It's not there yet. But I think as a brand, what we try to do is be as authentic and transparent.
Yeah.
We're one of the few brands which lists all our ingredients on our website.
Yeah,
And
you have an actual Inky list in 2020, well now 2024, but as recently as, I remember 2022, I was emailing brands going, what's in your product?
And
there's no way to tell. How are you selling this?
Yeah, you don't know that, right?
Yeah.
And I think those are the ways where I feel like the true quality of a brand will come out and will stand out, and I think that's what is needed in 2024 and going forward for India.
Yeah, okay. Shamika, you and marketing, first of all, are you a one-woman mainly? Like it's you marketing, you're developing, you're da-da-da-da.
I am a solo founder, if that's your question, yes.
Yes.
I do now have a team, who helps me do things. But like the marketing, product development is what I personally
marketing in
look
India
at.
for you, what's your experience been? What's your experience been?
So I think the way going back to, like why we launch every product, like that messaging and that storytelling really has to come through to your consumers. And what the strategy Dew has employed is, because we launch slowly, I really believe that each product sort of needs a runway, and at the price points that we operate, and even similar to Allies of Skin, you need to establish credibility behind every product for that product to have that penetration in the market over time. So why we launched a product is very important for me before I launch a product. And that's exactly what I tell my consumers when I launch it. Like, this is the reason, this is what I saw was missing. Here's how I went about doing and making a solution, and telling them that message very authentically. And that resonates to them.
So authenticity is your main marketing strategy, essentially.
And, of course, you do your performance marketing, your brand marketing, and now that's discussion. India, I would say, is a very fun market or time to be in. There are very different innovative ways to market in India, and a digitally first brand has the agility to experiment a lot of things, change your strategy, reiterate, try different things. And that's really cool right now for a lot of homegrown D2C brands.
Yeah, fascinating. This has been so interesting.